Hey everyone, here it is. I know you've been waiting oh so patiently. I've been a little bit busy, so I just wanted to make sure that I got this out and had it in the absolute best shape I could so that when all of you guys who are waiting for this were able to actually watch it, you get the most value possible. But this is part two of my ultimate beginner's guide. Now, we're going to focus particularly on team building, on the meta. We're going to do a little bit of analysis of some of the pro players here. I'm going to touch a bit on breeding, but only loosely, and give you guys a little bit of a head start as far as the investors' viewpoint of breeding and Axie Infinity goes. And other than that, I'm just going to go through a couple of builds, show you guys some resources that very heavily focus around Axie Zone, and we're going to build up a starter team, and you'll see how I look at Axies and what I look for as far as cards go, breeds go, purity, and of course pricing on Axies. So let's get started. I know we're going to touch basics here a little bit, and if you did watch part one, then you already know about this, but Axie Infinity, the team building aspect essentially works like this. You're going to have a frontliner, you're going to have a midliner, and you will have a backliner. Now that is like 99% of the time the way that it goes, but sometimes you can mix that up a little bit. If you are a new player though, I highly suggest that you follow this system because this is the way that you are going to see the most consistent success when playing in the arena. But if that's the case, then, well, best way to start would be a frontliner, right? And I know I did do a little bit of this in the first one, but I'm going to go in depth and show you guys what I really look for in a frontliner and what you should be looking for as well. So let me first off address the primary frontliners that'll be used in a team comp. Number one, we already mentioned it, it's going to be a plant tank. Plant tanks can be built in a variety of different ways. I'm going to show you a couple here. I'll show you how I would compare it to Axie Zone using the card tier list, and then of course how I would consider it by looking at the purity factor. Now, one thing I want to mention before we go in and start looking at purity factors, because that is really important for a breeder and an investor, I just want to mention one more time, this Freaks Axie extension that I have for Google Chrome, I'll leave a link in the description for you. It's a really good tool to use. It's absolutely free, so I highly recommend that you download it because then when you scroll over an Axie, it'll tell you exactly how pure it is. And by the way, I saw this too, this zero breed, practically pure aqua here on the first page for 0.0329 ETH. Yeah, this was a mistake on somebody's part. I even clicked on it and it showed me that the auction was not available. I hope nobody bought it out from them and then actually wants to like profit off it. I hope that the person realized that they were selling this for extremely under market and then pulled it off before it got bought. Either way, let's get into it. So when we look at plant tanks or tanks in general, you're going to have three different types. As I mentioned, the first one is plant. So using the marketplace here, you can select the type that you want. Now here's the cool thing. You can actually select multiple different types if you want. Now as far as tanks go, they're going to be kind of price casted. So if you choose the three main tanks, which are plant, aquatic, and dusk, they're going to be priced out so differently that you're probably just going to go through a couple pages of plant, then a couple pages of aquatic and dusk mixed in there, and then a bunch of dusk and really, really high-end strategic aquatics. So I would highly recommend you look through the types individually, but you can always put more than one part up there so that you can see what other parts will be available and the prices associated with them. So let's start with plants. Of course, I told you about this resource before, but we're going to refer to it here. We are going to go to Axie Zone. Now, before I even get too big into looking at this specific plant, I want to give you guys a nice little readout that you can look at and get an idea of some of the really common builds and particular Axies that people use in combat. In Axie Zone, if you come down here and you click on the Axie build, I did touch on this a little bit before, but I just want to re-mention it here. So this is a pretty awesome resource because it's actually going to show you the different kinds of builds depending on what you want. You can have it show you PvE or PvP. Now the cool thing is that you can go through and you can look at the different ones. Maybe all you want to do is PvE, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to be looking for PvP. So I would not deselect PvP regardless. And you can read through these a little bit. It will actually tell you the parts that it's equipped with. This one has Merry Legion, it has Shipwreck, which is Sponge, and then it's also got Navaga on the back, which is Flanking Smack, and Catfish on the front, which is a healing damage card. So this is not bad for a bruiser. You would seldom if ever see this in PvP, and that's why I'm happy they label it PvE. Let's get down into a couple other ones. They've got dual blade beasts. They've got this debuff support. They go through a lot of these, and if it is it has tags that it can be used in a PvP and PvE, That just goes to show that some of them are really strong. But I don't want to spend too much time going through this because you guys can read through it. I just thought I'd show you this because it is a good resource to go through and learn a few things. They do some write-ups about certain kinds of moves like Sinister Strike and, pairing it up with its passive. But let's use the card tier list because this is the one I mentioned before, and I highly recommend you use it, especially as a new player, because it is really good for you to understand the cards before you go and type them in to try and select them as a filter so you know which cards you're going for. Now, we're going to start with Plant. As I mentioned before, I like a lot of these cards here. I like October Treat. I think it is probably one of the best cards for a new player to have on a Plant tank. So if you're going Plant tank, 99% of the time, make sure that you select Pumpkin because you don't really want to tank without Pumpkin. Now, if you are a little bit more of a familiar player or you are in here and you've got a foundation and you know you want to take a different route, you are welcome to choose something else like Aqua Stock or whatever it might be that you want to use. Maybe Biden's. Biden's is a good one too. For everyone else, I would just say Pumpkin. So now that we have that already established, let's go back to the marketplace and let's make sure that we go to the parts section here and we start typing in Pumpkin. So select Pumpkin here. It's going to have it up in the filters. Remember, you can deselect it if you want, but now it will only show you the plant Axies that have Pumpkin. Let's head back to the card tier list here and take a little bit of a look through. Now, you want to try and figure out, okay, well, what am I going to choose for different parts and what am I going to keep open? I'll give you guys a little bit of a tip here. If you really want to see only the good cards on your specific kind of Axie, go through the S and the A tier, and every single part that is classed to the specific type that you're looking at, click on those, or not even click on them, but just go back to the marketplace and put them in as a filter. So I know most of these off by heart, so I'm going to type them in there, but just to refer back to it here, you have all of these green cards such as Carrot, Wooden, Prickly, Vegetal Bite, Cleanse Scent, Spicy Surprise, and Refresh, as well as Drain Bite and Aqua Stock. I would highly recommend typing all of these into the filters section. They're going to cover every single one of the cards, and it's only going to show you the Axies that have these cards. It's not going to show you something like, let's just go back here, a tank that has the last one feather, or a tank that has just something that you wouldn't want to use on a tank, especially as a beginning player. So let's start with this. I am going to go in, I'm going to put on, of course, Vegetal Bite, also known very well as Sirius. I'm going to put on Carrot Hammer here. Just give me a second. I'm going to put on Drain Bite. I'm not the biggest fan of Drain Bite, but you could go with that. I know a specific mouth called Vegan Diet here actually got buffs, so I'm going to put that one in there because I would think that is not a bad one. I'm going to put on Biden's. I think another one that they had in there was Hot Butt. I'm going to put on Hot Butt or Spicy Surprise, which was the card. Cleanse Scent, that's what we have with Biden's. Refresh, which is Mint. Mint you can put on as well. Mint is a pretty good one. Mint is very similar to Biden's. They're almost identical cards, but either way, it's good to have them on there. And then I think that pretty much covers all of them. Oh, Aqua Stock. Yeah, I can't forget about that one. That's a really good one because it works good against double Aqua teams. So Aqua Stock. You could go with Aqua Deflect, but, just stick it to this for now. So what you see here is we have a couple of different back cards. We've got actually a lot of back cards. We've got a couple tails, we've got a few horns, and we've also got, now one thing you could throw in here, and I'm just gonna, for everybody who's watching this, though it wasn't up there as a plant card, but this kind of goes against the norm. This specific card here, Disguise, it's a bug card, but it is practically made for a plant because the passive here allows you to gain 1 energy when it's comboed with a plant card, and it costs 0 energy. So this card is fantastic. You should also probably type this into the filter so that you can look at it. I know it goes against what I said before, but in this case, I'm going to make an exception. And hey, you're all watching me anyway, so you're going to hear it from me and probably search a lot of these exact Axies that I am. So I am going to put Disguise in here because I think it's good. If you've watched some of my gameplay, you know that I actually use a tank with Disguise, so I'm very, very passionate about that one. I think it's a great card. Okay, so what you see here is fantastic. This is how we want to start. So we have all of our filters set. You can go back to general here and you can just, we have pretty much all plant cards set up already, but if you really wanted to, you could go over and change the pureness. I wouldn't. There's no point. If you have the extension downloaded, it will tell you how pure they are as you hover over this really grayed out data section that's underneath the Axie number, it'll tell you how pure it is. It will literally give you a percentage. So now that you're here, what do you look for? Well, I'll tell you this. One of the things you should do is you should refer to some of my gameplay and how I talk about how different tanks fit into different team comps. I would say that if you're going to be building a double aqua team which focuses on one end of the types counter triangle, then you probably want to have a tank with a little bit of damage so that you can balance out the weaker ends of the aqua comp. But that's not the only time you're going to want a tank with damage in it. Honestly, I think that damage tanks are a little underrated for the most part. I think that when people think of tanks, they think of, oh, well, I just want it to survive. I want it to be utility based, but damage is really good. I mean, if you've played MMOs, you know that in 1v1 situations, tanks are really scary. They will usually win the 1v1, especially if there's a bit of a brawler aspect to them. So keeping that in mind, I think it's well worth going for a damage tank. Now, price-wise, as you can see, the floor here with a 79% purity is going to be about 0.0726 ETH, which from American dollar standpoint is going to run you just shy of 200. If we account for gas fees, if you haven't bought ETH that is from the Ronin wallet directly, for anybody who's here and hasn't seen that video, I'll leave a link up in the corner so that you can check it out. I made a video about buying wrapped ETH directly on Ronin. Check that out because it could save you some gas fees if it is available in your country. But back to this, you see where the floor is. The floor sits around that 0.08. You're going to be looking at these. To be honest, seeing a bunch with only like 4 breeds. There's a couple with 3 breeds, I'm sure. Yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for. But if you ask me, I think one of the best tanks to start with, if you're going to go with a damage horn, you probably want to have Carrot because it's going to help you with the energy. And one of the things I hear often from new players is that they have a lot of trouble with energy management. So I really push to consider energy cards because of how hard it can be to manage your energy, especially if you don't have a utility midliner like a Rimp. And even if you do have a Rimp, it's really dependent on if you get that combo off, and until you do, your energy is going to be a bit lacking. So if you're up against a team comp that takes advantage of that, it can be a little hard to get yourself going. So I would say don't consider a prickly and a hot butt in the beginning. It's a really good combo. I do not deny that, but I just think it's a little harder for a new player to play. I would say something maybe like a prickly and a carrot, or if you come down here, I wonder if there's going to be one here. Oh, perfect. You could also go for something like a leaf bug. That's these little leaves on the forehead here, and you could go with a spicy surprise, which is the hot butt. The reason I mention that, and I'll bring it up here so you can see, this isn't pure, so just be wary of that, but the place where it does have an impure part is, of course, where the card is, because it's a bug card, but also in the eyes with Telescope. This does give you a little bit of speed, which could be a nice thing when it comes down to fighting other teams and being able to go before them. The flip side of that is when you are faster as a tank, you end up enabling the other enemy team's prickly trap, which does extra damage if they attack last. So that is one thing you do want to consider. But the reason why I said this one in particular is because the leaf bug gives you that extra energy, and the hot butt is just a really, really good card with the 90 damage and the 50 shield. Not to mention the fact that it does nullify the mouth of the individual Axie that hits for the next turn. Now, this one has Drain Bite. I wouldn't really say that this is the ideal Axie to go for. There's a reason why this is the floor leaf bug, and it's because it has some cards that, it has 2-0 cost, which it isn't the greatest because this mint, though it is a good card, it only has 50 shield, so you're going to be a bit gutted here when it comes down to wanting to brick wall to take those strong beast combos or reptile combos, whatever they might be. So this I wouldn't suggest, but I did want to just show you the disguise and the hot butt. If you could have changed this mint with a pumpkin and the zigzag with a Sirius, this is almost a perfect tank Axie. But if you want to get one of those, they're going to be a little pricey. And remember, you don't really want to go for like a 6 or a 7 breed. You'd want to stick around this 4 breed. 3 breed if you can. 2 breed is good, but you gotta remember when you're looking at the Axie prices, getting something that's a 2 breed that's really out of the purity range takes away from the breeding potential later. Now, maybe you just don't want to breed tanks ever, and that's okay, because I don't think you should breed every type. You should probably try and focus on a couple of different types, or in the beginning, only one. But I still think you should have a little bit of breeding potential in a tank, because there may come a time where you change your mind, and it would suck to be gutted by that and have to completely unwind your comp in order to get some investment opportunity. So tank-wise, I would say that this covers quite a bit of it. I don't want to go too deep into all the cards because you can read them. But what I will say is that a lot of the horns are balanced between either energy or damage. If you do get the energy, make sure that you cover the damage with possibly a tail card like a hot butt here, or at bare minimum at least a carrot, because the carrot does 70 damage. It gives you a bit of shield, and it has a passive where if your shield gets broken, it gives you energy, so it does kind of balance out the energy factor. But you could also go for something that has damage, get a carrot, have the Sirius and the pumpkin. I think something like that would just be a perfect starter. Let me show you one here for just for kicks. Like this gentleman here with the eyes. Now I know he does have nerdy eyes, which are bug eyes, so I would probably go for something that has like plant eyes, like this one here. You know, let's show you this one. This one's pretty close. Oh, geez, that one also has it. Wow, there's not a lot of these around here. Let me see. Just give me a moment. This one, here we go. This one's perfect. So this one actually looks a lot like one of my tanks that I have. I think there's something up with the marketplace. It's not going to let us buy anything, but that is what it is. This tank in general is an ideal tank for a beginner. The price isn't bad. It has 3 breeds, so it does have some breeding potential. It has 61 health, which is the max, so it's going to have a lot of health. 31 speed, so you might have those times where you're able to actually find a prickly trap tank, and then you can end up stopping him from using his passive on his prickly trap. So this is a really good one here. You can also look at the cards. The cards are absolutely perfect. I love these cards. Now, some people might say, hey, go for the prickly over the wooden stab. I think that's up to you. I actually personally like wooden stab better because I think it's just a better card stat-wise, and you don't always get to use the prickly. The prickly is a little bit of a toss-up. The wooden stab is a little bit easier to control as to when you're going to get the extra damage, because this gives you extra damage if your shield breaks. So tanks are gonna get targeted a lot. And even if it doesn't, say you're at your last ditch here and you want to make sure that you tank up as much as you can, 2 wooden stabs, a pumpkin, and a carrot is going to give you a lot of shield, really put you in a position to dish out the damage and not die as a result. So this would be a really good tank, but you know, let's keep going because I want to show you guys a couple of other options as well. Now that you know a tank, I would say that from a starter team point of view, you could either take the traditional tank, beast, bird. You could go for a tank such as I just showed you there, double aqua. Now, I think that because we're going to make it a little bit easier for you guys and focus directly on the starter comps, I'm going to show you 3 comps that I think are the ideal comps. The one is going to be the tank, the beast, and the bird. The other one is going to be the plant tank and double aqua. And then the final one I'm going to show you is the plant tank, the reptile, and the beast. And the reason I'm going to show you that one is because you can interchange the reptile and the beast, and it's really, really strong against a lot of the meta comps right now, which focus a lot on aquas, reptiles, and terminators, such as terminator bugs or reptiles. So let's jump into beasts because beasts are kind of applicable to both. I want to show you the 2 different kinds of beasts that I think are pretty much the most meta that you would want to go for. And just to stick to the process that I told you guys, let's go back to the card list because this is the way you're going to do it. You're always going to bring up beast here. Give me a sec. Okay, perfect. So we're on beast. So you can see here these nut cards. If you've played Axie or seen Axie, you always hear people talking about the double nut. This is what it is. The double nut is the nut crack mouth and the nut throat tail. These cards are just so good, and you're going to see them on a majority of beasts. Now, single combat Ronin, really, really good card. Piercing sound, known as Goda, also a good card. So we're going to go through this same process of getting all the beast cards and just putting them in the filter list. I know most of them, so I'm going to put them in here for you, but make sure you use that resource to type them in. So let's put them in here. I'll just need one moment. Fantastic. Okay, so now we have the beasts that are going to be kind of your ideal choice to go through. Now, what you're going to notice here is anytime that you're going to type all of these parts into a beast search, you're going to get 100 beasts that look like this. This is called the double nut rimp. The reason they call it that is because the little tail here on the back and the mouth are both nut cards. So you've got Nut Throw, Nutcracker, and then this is why it's called a Rimp, is because you have Ronin on the back, which is this little top knot. Yeah, it looks like a samurai top knot. I love it because, I mean, I am a samurai. If you've seen my backdrop, you've probably noticed the swords. And then it's got the Imp Horn, which is just such a good combo with Ronin. The reason being is because Ronin is a guaranteed critical strike if you pair it with at least 2 other cards. And Imp gives you an energy every time you critical strike something. So really, really good. If you were to tie 2 Ronins together with 1 or 2 of these Imps, and by the way, they do stack. So if you have 2 and 2, it's 2 energy each time you crit. I know, it's nuts. But it's not something you're going to always get. It's a combo that does come around, but you got to be careful because what'll happen is there is a lot of times you won't get this combo, so sometimes you just got to go for the single and the double Ronin, or at times you go with a Ronin, an Imp, and a double Nut to make sure that you can clear out a tank. That's a really, really common combo you're going to see a lot, so don't just always rely on this combo, but it is nice to know you have that utility. So this is a pretty pure beast. It says here 6/6 pure. Now, if I roll over, I realize it's not 100% pure. This is why it's good to have the extension, is because somebody will say pure. And although it is pure as far as the body parts go, and you can see that by it having 61 morale, it's not pure as far as the recessive genes. So from an investor's point of view, this might not be the best choice when you look at it and determine that it is 0.07 ETH, and there might be one that is a little more pure for just a little bit more expensive. So as I mentioned, I think the market is going through an upgrade right now, and that's why it's not letting us buy, but you will be able to buy. They're probably just doing a little bit of a maintenance here, which is fine. So another one you're going to see quite often is this dual blade one here. And if you have seen my gameplay, you know that this is my go-to, my very, very almost iconic mascot of my gameplay and of my channel, which is Tunut. He has a build similar to this. His build is actually a slight bit different, but I will say that the way that I play him is not the most meta way. The most meta way to play him is kind of what you see right here, actually, so I'm going to show you this one. It's going to look quite similar because it does have the double nut. Double nut, it's such a good combo to have on a beast because these cards, they're stacked as far as stats go. They have the same damage and shield as the allergic reaction, but they have that really easy to pull off passive damage bonus because getting 2 of these, since you have 2 body parts that are nut cards, it's really likely and you're going to pull it a lot, and the damage on these is fantastic. So really good combo, but because you have the Sinister Strike, which is a crazy card, by the way, you're going to be getting the 250% damage when you crit. It doesn't increase the critical chance, just the critical damage, so keep that in mind. But it's a good card all around with the 130 damage and the 20 shield. So because you're already using a lot of high damage cards and you don't have anything that really synergizes with crit like you did with the Imp, a lot of people will go with a risky beast back or potentially go with what's called a Jaguar or a Nitro Leap, which is very similar stat-wise to this. So the reason you do this is because compared to Ronin, which is only 75 damage and 0 shield, this is just stat-wise a better card. So a lot of the times people will go for this, and beasts are really well known to be in Last Stand, so you never know. This doing 150% damage in Last Stand, that is going to hurt. That is a lot of extra damage. So this is a really good beast to work with too. One other beast type, just I don't want to spend too long, but I want to show you the 3 main ones. Another one is the energy focus beast. Now the energy focus beast is going to have a couple of different variances here. Let me just pull off the Nutcrack mouth because that would probably not be one of them. The Nutcrack throw, I'm going to put on hair, and I already have Goda, so, oh, sorry, not hair, that's not the one I'm looking for. It's a cute, it's called, this is the one, Cottontail, that's what it is. I don't use this part often, so it slipped my mind. So, this is an energy control beast. Really, really strong. I wouldn't get one with plant parts unless you really want to get that extra price, but down here you have one with like full beast cards, and the kitty cat ears look kind of cute anyways, so I wouldn't recommend going for too many of these floor ones that have a mismatch of different parts, because when we look at this from an investment point of view, do you really want to have a chance of these parts going through? No, they don't come across as appealing when you consider them for a 0.004 ETH difference to one that does. So let's bring this one up here. I think it's pretty cute and I think it is good. Now, this one here has piercing sound, Goda. You'll probably hear this used a lot when you're watching people play Axie. Really, really good card. The stats are great with 80 damage and 40 shield, and it also destroys one of your opponent's energies. So this is a really good one. Another one here is the Cottontail Luna Absorb. Now it's a 0/0 as well as a 0 cost because the only reason this exists on an Axie is to give you energy. Now, one cool thing about this, and this is why this is a super energy focused utility beast, is you still have the Imp, you have the Ronin, you have the Goda, and you even have a 0 cost that gives you energy. So you could very well use a Ronin, an Imp, and a Cottontail, which is pretty easy to pull off and get a bunch of energy from it if you wanted. So this is the kind of beast that, let's say you have a damage tank, you have a pure damaged backline, and you just need something to give you energy, this might not be a bad idea, especially since they're very cheap. You could pick one of these up for pretty easy. But one other thing I want to mention, just as like a notable mention here, because I didn't put it in, is rice. Rice is an incredible tail item or tail part on a beast. I like it a lot. It is a little riskier, and I wouldn't recommend tying it up with Goda, actually. I would actually recommend doing it with a Nutcracker because I just think it's a lot better. So let's put this on here. Fantastic. Here's a good one to show you. This is going to be a more expensive build, and you'll know why in a moment. Because Rice, first off, it's a good card with 80 damage, but it steals energy from your opponent. So that is incredible. The only other cards that are like this, they're usually really gutted as far as damage goes. So this is an incredible card doing 80 damage, stealing energy. It is a tail card too, so the only thing you're really missing is a nut. And just as a quick little mention here, because some people might have this thought in their mind, no, you don't need two different nut cards to get the passive. You could very well just get two of these mouth cards drawn and the passive will activate. So you're not going to be gutting yourself on that. You're just going to be limiting your opportunity to draw more Nutcracker cards because you don't have the nut throw on the tail. So this should pretty much cover the beast. I hope you guys were able to understand kind of what to look for in a beast and also how to balance it into your team, right? If you need energy, focus a little more to the energy side of the beast. If all you need is just a lot of damage, then focus towards the damage side of the beast. But all in all, beasts are one of the best Axies in the game. I think that's also why they're one of the most played Axies. So I think that covers beasts. And now let's get to another one which is really important, and that is Aquas. If you guys have watched my gameplay, you know I love Aquas. Nemo is an incredible Aqua, but he is super expensive. Now, when it comes to a double Aqua in particular, I do actually recommend having an Aqua with the Nemo card. So I'm going to use the same process here. I am going to go into the card tier list. I'm going to go to the Aquatic, and I think you should too. Just always have this open so you can look at it. Now, I do warn you, fair warning, is that Aquatics can be a little weird because they can be used in multiple different crossbreeding roles, especially once you get up in the elo. So this might be a little bit harder to actually refer to, but if you use what I used before and just focus specifically on the blue cards, go through the S and the A tier, you've got a ton of blue cards down here, and a lot of these cards are incredible. Now, this is why I say be careful, because you have cards like Shelter here, which is primarily focused for a frontline, beefy, tank Aqua. This Shelter is fantastic. It is an anti-beast card because it nullifies crits, but you're not really going to want this on an Aqua. Now, what I might do, just because I don't want to spend too much time going into all the Aqua builds, is I might actually do a specific video on the many faces of Aquas so that you guys can understand them more particularly. But for now, I'm just going to show you the primary ones. So let's go back in here. I'm going to start putting them in just so you can see. So one is Risky Fish. You'll see this all the time. Really great mouth. Another one is Crimson. This one here is Lamb. I really enjoy Lamb, called Angry Lamb. And I'm going to put Goldfish. I am going to put Perch, although Perch is a little bit more expensive. You might not find too many Perches for a cheap price. I am going to put Blue Moon as well, because Blue Moon is a good one, and I'll tell you why it's really good in a moment here. For the tails, I'll probably put Navaga because I do enjoy it. I am going to put Koi because this is one of the most popular tails, and then, of course, Nemo because I love the Nemo tail. Now, for the horns, there's a couple of different horns you can go for, but I'm going to show you the main ones here that I think you should consider. So other than that, I think Aranda is good, but Aranda is a little expensive. Okay, so This is kind of how I would look at aquas. Now, I would go through and I would consider how all of the parts mesh and also consider the purity factor of aquas. What you could do if you're looking for a really lean investment and growth opportunity is you could get two very similar aquas, such as this one right here with the shoal star. Now, I wouldn't go with this one particularly because, as you can see, it's got gecko in the eyes, so try and keep it as pure as possible, even if you have to pay a little bit more. But how about this one right here? This one's perfect. This one it's primarily pure at 93%, so it's a good chance you're going to breed. It does have two recessive ones that are not really good. You wouldn't want to get them, but that's not the end of the world here. So you could pick up one like this with the shoal star, and you could pick up another one. I wouldn't get this one with the beast eyes. Maybe like down here where you can get it with the Babylonia, or let's go with another shoal star. That one has, or kind of like this one. This one's good too. So you could very well pick up one like this, and this one has the Nemo tail, which is really good. This one has Navaga, and this one has Nemo tail. Navaga, the blue little tail on the back here, does a lot of damage. I'll bring it up just so you can see it here, but I want to bring both of these up so you can see both of them and understand what I mean when I say getting similar aquas so that you can breed them together. So bring these guys up. First one here is our goofy dude with the tanning glasses. I don't really like these eyes, but hey, they work. They're pure aqua eyes. So aquas are known as one of the best Axie stat for stat because the only stat that they really lack in is morale. And I mean, if you've seen any gameplay, you already see that anybody can crit even if you have low morale. So the big thing about aquas is they have enough health to usually survive full damage 4 cards combos from different Axies like birds. Reptile's debatable because reptiles do extra damage to aquas and they could one hit you even with a shield. Most of the Axies cannot one hit aquas if you shield up. They have 57 speed, which is fantastic. That is only second to birds. And if you have koi or you have goldfish here, which gives you extra speed, you could very quickly be faster than a bird without much trouble. So this aqua here has goldfish. Goldfish is one of the probably the most common back that you're going to find on an aqua. I don't think it's the greatest, but it does work well. What I mentioned is that it gives you speed, but it's only if you get hit, so you do have to be getting hit in order to get that speed bonus. I think it's the most common ones, so you're going to find them on Axies that are the cheapest. Risky Fish is good. This is another really common one, but it's good because when you're attacking one of its counters, a plant, a reptile, or a dusk, it gives you an attack bonus, so you can really make that work to your advantage. Now, Navaga is great. I like this one a lot. It works best when you have a low stock number, though, because the way that this works is you deal extra damage if you attack first. So the way that initiative works, as I kind of mentioned in the first one, is there's a couple different factors to it, but how low your stock number is a big point that they take into consideration. So it is good to know that if your Axie is a high stock number, Navaga might not be as good of a grab, but hey, it could be an investment for the future. Eventually, 300 is not going to be very high. That'll be lower on the list once you consider 800,000 Axies existing in the universe. But the best card on here, personally speaking, is Star Shuriken. This card does not have much shield, which does make it a bit of a risky play, but the passive is so good because normally if you bring an Axie down to just 0 health, they'll go into Last Stand, which could really cause you a lot of grief, especially if you are in Last Stand yourself and trying to finish the Axie off before your Last Stand procs are over. But this one will actually kill it rather than putting it in Last Stand because it has a passive where if this is the final attack that hits, kind of like Chill, but Chill has to be put before you kill it, this will stop the Axie from going into Last Stand. And now, if we were to look at these cards and look at the purity factor here being pretty close to 100, and then consider this other one, we're working with very, very similar Axies. Now, this one has Tail Slap, and I think Tail Slap is a great card. I would actually prefer to have Tail Slap over Navaga in most cases, but sometimes you need a little more damage. You could take these two, who are very similar Axies, have a tank in the front, and then use these two, with this one probably being in the back. Personally speaking, I think this would be a best backline because it has the 0 cost, and 0 cost is good so that you can kind of play around being stunned or sticky goos that would stun you. If you haven't seen me play around that, I will leave a link up in the corner to one of my games which really showcases that as an example, so you guys can go and check it out. But other than that, it's pretty much the same cards here. So when you go to breed these, which are only at 4 breeds and only a 0.079, which is pretty low on the floor when you're considering things, you could start to breed them and start to make a little bit of money relatively quick. Now, I will mention after I'm done with this, I'll mention the breeding factor and how to set that up and how to know how to make that an endless income stream. But just give me a moment now. I want to keep touching on these. So, these are the aquas that I would recommend. I think that these are the best choices in considering damage aquas. Tank aquas are another story. There are also brawler aquas that can heal themselves. I'll make another video later on with that. And once I do, I'll throw a link up in the corner so you can check that one out too. But let's get on to the final one. And this is one where you're going to see all over the Axie Infinity leaderboards. You're going to see people always speaking highly of these, and that's reptiles. Reptiles are just amazing if you ask me. I do think that they can be a little harder to play sometimes once you get up into the upper elos, but for the low elos, they just crush a lot of the metas like bird comps. They don't do as well against beast comps, but they are tanky enough to usually tank beast combos, and they have a lot of utility that focuses around stuns. So let's go back to the card tier list like I mentioned here. Let's go up and choose Reptile. It'll show us all the reptile cards. We'll put most of them in. I'm going to put them in kind of just based on my knowledge, and then I'm going to touch on one that I have that's in my inventory that kind of goes against what I'd give you guys as a system, just so that you can know it. Same thing as the plant tank, so I can show you guys the other ones. So let's start putting in these parts here. Okay, so we have a lot of the parts that you would have here. What you will notice is there is only one mouth because, in all honesty, there's not a whole lot of reptile mouths. Another one you could choose that I'll put in here is Kitaro. Kitaro is good. It's funny enough, you have one mouth that is a V and one mouth that is kind of an A without the line through it. It's just what direction the arrow is pointing. If it's pointing up, it's Kitaro, and I'll show you really quick what it does so you can see. Kitaro here, first off, it's got good stats. I won't deny that. They're not the greatest stats when compared to Chomp, but they're good. But if you want to attack an Axie that is faster than you, and only having 41 speed, there's a lot of Axies that are faster than reptiles. You end up gaining energy from it. So it is not a bad card to use. I do think that the Chomp is better, and that is because when you pair Chomp up with two other cards, and if one of them is a 0 cost, that's quite easy, then it stuns them. And stunning an Axie is just phenomenal because it forces them to have to use a card and burn it. And if they don't have a 0 cost of their own, that could really turn the tides of battle and give you just a competitive edge that they can't overcome. So really, really good option here. Now, I was on a nearly perfect reptile there. I'm going to bring up two of the main reptiles that I see people playing. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with this one. This one's pretty close. And then I'm going to bring up one more from my inventory here so you can see this one. And this is well known as the Terminator reptile. So just go over here. Let's start going through them. The first one here is a very popular reptile. This one is a Scaly Lunge, Vine Dagger, Critical Escape, and a Chomp reptile. Now, this one does have plant ears, so I would recommend going for something that does have reptile ears. This one sits at about 0.751, so just give me a sec here. This one has bird ears, which actually is pretty good. I'm not going to lie, I like that. But when you tie it with Surprise Invasion, it could come back on you. So you know what? I'm going to change these two. I want to show you some pure ones so you can see. This one here is quite pure, but it has Chubby. That one's pretty pure. This one is quite pure, so I think I'm going to go with this one. It doesn't have Scaly Lunge. It has Disarm, but that works as well. And then let's go for our Tri-Spikes. That one's pretty close. It just has Kitaro. This one has the Aqua Eyes. Although, wow, there's not a whole lot of Tri-Spikes out there that are pure. Okay, this one's pretty pure. It has Scaly Lunge, so I'm going to use that one because it did actually get buffed, so I'd like to show you that card. Perfect. So let's start with this. Let's go to the Vine Dagger one, because this is probably the most popular reptile. Now, it is a little more expensive at 0.1, and you're going to see probably most of them around this price if you want anything that doesn't have like 7 breeds on it, and you want some pureness to it. Now, reptiles, right off the bat, you can see here, great stats. They have 57 health, so I mean, they're almost as tanky as plant tanks. They've got 41 speed, which is the same as a purebred beast, so that is really good speed overall. And then they also have 35 morale. Where they lack is in the skill, but really, at the moment at least, skill isn't the most important factor because it only accounts for a couple of different attributes, but mostly it's morale, speed, and health. So reptiles are really stacked, really strong, hard to one-hit them with all the health they have, and they do hold their own as far as speed goes. So the reason why this one is so common is for a couple of different reasons. It has that Chomp card I told you, which is the pair it with 2 additional cards, and it stuns. It not only has that, its stats are just fantastic with 80 damage and 50 shield. Really, really good card, but remember, every single turn, you only draw 3 cards and get 2 energy. So if you have to use this at the end of the game and you have to pair it with 2 cards, that's why you're going to want a 0 cost. So this Vine Dagger, which is the little green thorns on the back here, this is a 0 cost card, and it does have decent stats actually. Having the 20 damage and the 30 shield, this can be used in a lot of different unique ways. You can use it to try and burn when you are stunned so that you're not wasting a damage card. You could use it to finish off Last Stand, or you can just put it into a combo with Disarm or Wall Gecko and Chomp, and all of a sudden you get the passive because there are 2 cards other than the Chomp in the combo, and one of them is a 0 cost, so you only had to use 2 energy for it. So this is a really, really common build. I do like Disarm. You could take a different route, which is the other one I was showing you, which was the Scaly Lunge. So Scaly Lunge, it's very similar to this, but it just does more damage when you pair it with a Lunge card. Now, none of these are lunge, so honestly, Disarm's probably a little better because it does actually add speed minus to them, and negative speed to any Axie. I mean, initiative being gutted is super big. That is debilitating in a lot of cases, so it's really good to have this. I do think that Disarm is the better choice personally, but if you want to go this route, you're probably paying a bit more. You could maybe find one with the Scaly Spear, which would just be a little bit cheaper. And then you have Critical Escape. Now, if you're coming past the most recent patch, this did get a little bit of a nerf. I wouldn't say by much, but they gutted some of the shield on it. It needed to happen. This card used to be broken beyond all belief. I still think it's broken because it stacks. So you could have a round where you put 2 of these up and you're taking negative 30% damage. It is just incredible. Makes you as tanky, if not tankier than a plant in most cases. So this is a really good reptile to look at. The other one I mentioned was this one. The reason I would mention this one, and by the way, just as a mention here, you could sub this horn in for either of the horns I just mentioned, is Tri-Spikes. This is probably one of the best reptile cards in the game, equal to, if not better than Chomp. And if you can read this right here, it says you target enemy with the lowest shield when comboed with 2 or more cards. So just based off of this card alone. Now, there are ways to play around it, definitely, but even just the threat of having this will make the enemy consider, do I shield up on my tank? Because if I do, maybe he will use Spike Throw to bypass my tank and kill one of my unshielded Axies in the back. So that in and of itself just adds a huge mind game factor to it, but overall, it's a really, really good card. The stats are good. It's equal to Chomp as far as stats go. It's just a strong card. I highly recommend it if you can pick one up for a cheap price. This one is about 0.14, and it was one of the cheapest ones we found. I do think you're probably looking somewhere around that 0.13 to 0.2, or even 0.25, 0.3, depending on the cards. There are some variations of this where you add other type cards into this, like a Disarm here, and then a Thorny Caterpillar here, which does extra damage to debuffed Axies, and it is just, you're a menace. Needless to say, you're an absolute force to be reckoned with. So this is really good. Scaly Spoon, Tiny Catapult, this did just get buffed. It used to have only like 60 damage, I believe. Now it has 80, which does actually make it a fair card, and it also reflects 50% of range damage back at the attacker. Now, I do think that ranged cards are a little less used in the meta compared to melee cards, and I think that's why this is still kind of off meta, but it's not a bad card, and I could consider this, especially when you're up against a lot of birds, because no bird is going to mess with you. If you're reflecting 50% of the damage back at them, you're stunning them, and you're taking negative damage, birds are not going to fight you. You could probably survive 2 full rounds of 4 cards against a bird, having this kind of a reptile. So really good mention. The final mention here before I actually transition forward and talk a little bit about breeding and how to set up a breeding colony is the Terminator Reptile. This is my reptile, actually. If you have seen me play this, you know how strong it is. If you haven't seen me play it, I'll throw a link up in the corner so you can watch some of my gameplay. This is a really strong reptile. You can build it a couple different ways depending on how you want the eyes and the ears. They affect your stats, specifically your speed and your health. So that is a factor here. The one I chose was a little bit faster, and I like it because it allows me to go before most beasts or other reptiles that I'm going to be fighting. So I do like having this because I can get the advantage on them. The reason why this is so strong is because it uses that similar combo to the Chomp and the 0 cost, but it also has Sticky Goo, and it has Thorny Caterpillar, which, as you can see here, does 130 percent damage to debuff targets. Now, funny enough, using the math, it is about 130 damage, but either way, this combo is so strong. So Chomp will stun, and when you pair it with the 0 cost with only using 2 energy, say a Sticky Goo, a Mystic Rush, and a Chomp, or if you have a lot of energy, might as well go Sticky Goo, Mystic Rush, Thorny, and a Chomp. What this does is this puts out a lot of damage, but more importantly, the Sticky Goo will stun your attacker as they break your shield, and the Chomp will stun your attacker as long as you pair it with 2 other cards. So for only 2 energy, you can stun the enemy, and then once they break your shield, which if they're trying to kill you, they're going to have to break your shield, then you can stun them again. It is absolutely oppressive. Now, that being said, there are definitely a lot of ways to beat this Terminator rep, and as a full team comp goes, you need a little bit more to try and get through tankier front lines than just this, because only having allergic reaction and Chomp, it's not going to do as much damage to tanks as, say, a Beast with a bunch of Nutcracker cards. So that is kind of the trade-off for it. But all in all, really, really good Axie. Now, this is much more expensive. I picked this one up for about 0.15, give or take a little bit. And I think that's what they're going for. I know that there is somebody who is breeding these in a colony, so it has brought the price down. They used to be a lot higher, which is good for us because, I mean, I don't need to breed these. I picked one up with a 5 breed because I'm not really looking to breed it. And if I do, well, so be it. I pick one more up, I breed it, and then I do a crossbreed using grandparents or whatever it might be. So this was the last one I wanted to mention here before I get into the next part. I hope you guys have understood this. I know it's a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure I went over the primary meta comps and then my opinion as well as my explanation on what makes them strong, what makes them weak, and how you should mix them together. Now, if you want to know a little bit more as far as how they play, some of the counters, some of the weaknesses, my Zero to Hero series is really good to refer to for that, and I will leave a link to the first one up in the corner because I go through and I play a lot of these comps I just talked about, and I show you how they play, I show you and talk about the strengths as well as the weaknesses. So this is kind of more of the gateway. Now that you're here, now that you want to know more, watch those videos and they will teach you everything that you are looking for. So that being said, one of the things I know a lot of you guys are here for, and I mean, some of you guys might have just skipped ahead to this point because this is all you wanted. Let's talk about business and breeding. So I am a business owner. I have actually founded or co-founded plenty of businesses, one of which is a consulting firm. So I actually do management consulting for companies. A lot of the companies when they're looking for mergers, exits, or acquisitions. So for me, numbers in business is everything. And for Axie, that is one of the main reasons why I got into it, is I saw the business potential in it. So what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to bring up a little window up in the corner because the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you, because I'm going to write it on my iPad, it just works a little bit better, is I'm going to go over a breeding comp. I mentioned considering breeds, but you're probably thinking, okay, so do I have to keep buying more Axies and breeding? No. If you were going the aqua route and you wanted to make an endless breeding system, you really only need 4 Axies to start. Now, you could do it with 3. Doing it with 3 requires you to buy Axies that have considerably higher breeds. So I actually recommend going 4 because I think lower breeds, I meant higher breed potential. So I would consider actually going for maybe something that has 3 or 4 breeds, breeding each of those 4 Axies independently between the 2 of them, getting at least 2 or 3 Axies from each of them, and then going from there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing it up here so that you guys can see up there what I'm talking about when I mean this. So just to give you the numbers here, let's say we have Axie number 1 and Axie number 2, and let's assume that these are pretty similar Axies. Like if we were looking at the Aquas here, let me go to my inventory, let me bring up Nemo and Nemo's Bride, because these are 2 Axies I'm planning on breeding. So let's say we have these 2 Axies here, and these are the 2 we're thinking of. So we have these ones. Nemo is strong. He's got these cards right here. If I go to Nemo's Bride, very similar. She has a Navaga, but she has a recessive 1 and a recessive 2 Nemo gene, so pretty likely I'm going to get Nemo out of this. Maybe I don't. Maybe I get Navaga. Not a problem. I already have plans for that. But they're both pretty low on breeds. I mean, this one's only 2 breeds, so I can breed it a few times here. What I'm planning on doing is breeding them together. So If you found them, which the best way to find good breeds is to use the Axie breeding calculator here, and I'll show you that in just a moment here, but I want to just go back to what we're doing here. Imagine we have those two Axies that are similar. Now, we need a little bit more than that, so over on the other side here, we're going to have two more Axies that are quite similar in type, cards, etc. Now, you breed them both together, and underneath you are going to get, let's just, for argument's sake here, say... Let's say, you know what, let's say two more Axies. Just for argument's sake, let's say you don't have a lot of money, you're trying to make this with a really lean startup, which I respect that. I've lean startup a lot of business. It can be a lot of fun, even though it's a lot of trouble. So let's just assume that you get two out of each of these. Let's even, just for, you know, let's say you got lucky and you got one that had a little bit less. Let's say that we have a third one. We're just going to put it up there. It's part of this left side. Now, what you're going to do is, because Axies cannot breed with siblings, but Axies can breed with cousins, we are going to breed baby 1 with baby 1 on the other side. We are then going to breed baby 2 with baby 2 on the other side. Now, for some of you math guys or business guys, you're already starting to see it. It's coming together for you. I know, I can see the look in your eyes. But the baby set 1, because we have 0 breeds now, you should have no problem getting a minimum of 3, but probably closer to 4 breeds out of them. Let's say you get 4 breeds here, so I'm going to go with breed 1, 2, 3, 4. And now these all came from that upper line, just so you know. And now on the next one here, on the next one, we are going to get, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we even have this one up here in the corner here. Now you could look at this, or in the middle here, you could look at this however you want to. That's a pretty terrible star. I'm gonna put it like that. You could look at that however you want. You could even just sell that depending on how the genes came out, or maybe it was a runt, who knows? You don't really need it, but it's there, it's just extra, and that does happen sometimes. But if you look at the breeds that you just made, now they're all cousins. And unfortunately, even if you don't agree with this, in Axie, they're all digital, so there's no ancestral factor. It's more of just a limitation and a rule on breeding. You can now breed them together. So let's say you breed all of these together now, because they can breed. They are independently, their relationships are independent to one another. You can then breed them, and here's where things get really interesting. Now, that initial 4 Axies you used, well, look at where you're at. With only 2 generations of breeding, you have now doubled your stock of Axies. And you can use the same system I just showed you to continue breeding them endlessly and getting money from them. And now one of the things I recommend you do is, in order to get a little bit of return on it, because if you just keep breeding and breeding and breeding and just hold them all, you're never going to get any return, is after you've done about 3 or 4 breeds, depending on you. You could even go up to 5 if you want, but I mean, SLP is, the usage has gotten a little bit higher, is that you can go from there and you can sell a few of them after you're done breeding them. Or if you really want to, because the biggest bottleneck here is going to be SLP, is you can then go and start creating scholarship teams. And now that, if anybody here is still on the business side of it, you're probably thinking, okay, well, that is a variable that has to be taken into consideration. SLP, how do I balance that? Don't worry, I got you. Make sure that when you're breeding, you consider a few factors. Consider the opportunity of breeding scholarship Axies with sellable Axies and having this endless loop together. The best way to do this is choosing types that can also be used to create competitive scholarship teams. So for me, as you can already see here with Nemo and Nemo's Bride, clearly I'm looking at double aquas as an option here. If I can get a bunch of these bred, I can put a bunch of teams together, which I already have. I have a few teammates myself who are helping to bring more SLP in, and I am paying them for it. You now get the opportunity to breed, and instead of selling all of them after you're done breeding them, maybe sell half of them, turn the other half into scholarship teams. So if you are wanting to do this super, super, super lean, I recommend going one of a few ways. Either 3 type it, or 2 type it, you could, and make one of them a tank, 100% a tank. The second one, you could do it aquas, but aquas are a little bit pricey. And then the third way you could do it is you could do it where you have tanks, say beasts or birds, and then you just fill in the gaps with the income you get from selling some of your extras. So what you would do is you would then use this system that I showed you. You would go from there and you would then sell the ones you don't need and use that ETH to buy the backline, midline, or, well, preferably not frontline. You should probably have tanks in the mix here if you want to make this a really profitable business and sustainable model, is you can fill in the gaps like that. So I hope that helped explain a little bit from the breeding side. I know I just went into it loose there because I wanted to show you guys what I call this is essentially breeding a colony. It is using the Axies that you have. I prefer 4 of them, but you could do any of them, and making a self-sustainable business model. Now, with the upgrade of SLP, you're going to need a lot of SLP, so scholarships will come into play. I personally think scholarships are great because they not only benefit whoever is able to be the manager in it, but they also benefit the scholars, who are usually people in other countries that their dollar might not be as strong or the quality of life might be different. So you'd be significantly improving their life by giving them work. So it is a really, really awesome thing. I think this is one of the most, close to home for me because I'm all about impact. I came from a low-income lifestyle in the middle of rural Saskatchewan, which is the center of Canada. Anyone who knows Canada knows Saskatchewan is not known for being a very wealthy part of the country. So if I see an opportunity to really improve people's lives like that, I'm going to take that. And on that point, that's one of my big objectives here. I have a lot of people, some of you who might be watching, who message me and say, hey, we have scholarships running. I don't yet, and it's because I'm running a lot of different businesses here, but we're really close to it. So give me maybe another month or two, and I will do a big announcement about scholarships happening. But I don't want to go too far off there. I don't want to start warming up the eyes because that does get me real all nice, warm, and fuzzy on the inside. But let's go back to the breeding side. There was one thing I wanted to mention, which is the breeding calculator. So let me just show you that really quick. I'm just going to take it over here. I'll leave a link to the breeding calculator in the description so you can see it. Put one of your Axies in the one slot and put the other one in the other slot. Now I know Nemo's code off by heart here, and you see what you got. Now the first thing you see here is that it's 100% pure. This is great. I personally like dealing with pures because then you have less chance for mutations to really gut your Axie. And when you're dealing with an Axie as expensive as Nemo, I think Nemo, even with 4 breeds or 5 breeds on him, he'd probably be going somewhere around like 0.2, 0.25 because this Axie is just so strong. If you guys have seen me play Nemo, you know that he's very, very strong. So what we have here is the eyes are probably going to be clear. I don't really care much about which eyes come out, but I did say I don't like those telescope ones, so I am kind of hoping for the clear. The ears, again, not a problem, but the big thing here is the Aranda, the Piranha, the Sponge. Those are the 3 main cards, and then it is a bit of a toss-up here with Navaga being at 37, but because the Bride had both a recessive 1 and a recessive 2, which was Nemo, we have a pretty high chance to get Nemo. So I'm hoping if I breed them 2 or 3 times together, I'm going to get at least 2 or 3 Nemos. That's the idea. That's what I'm banking on. Even if I only get 2, that's fine. And then I have 2 other Aquas that are very similar to them, and I'm going to breed the children together and create those colonies. So hope that helps explain it a little bit. Now, what I am going to do is I am going to just wrap the beginner's guide up for the most part here. I hope that, I know I've talked a lot here and I've gone pretty quick, but refer to the timestamps, watch it over a couple times if you have to. Even, put comments down below. If you guys have watched any of my videos, you know how good I am at getting back to you in the comments. If you have questions, I'm going to get back to you. I know as the subscribers go up and the comments get bigger, it's going to get a little harder, but that's why I have a Discord that I'm going to be making in the near future here, and that'll help make things a little bit easier. Plus, you can always use that to contact someone else in my team, because it's not just me. I'm not just the only source of knowledge. Everyone in the MTTM team is going to be a really strong knowledge point that you can refer to and talk to. All right, that being said, I know I've talked for a long time here. What I do want to do is I'm actually going to go into a little bit of a pro player analysis. Not going to take too long. I'm going to do it maybe 5 minutes here. So for all of you guys who just came for the beginner's guide, you can wrap it up here. I really appreciate you guys being around and sticking around for it. For everyone who wants to see a little bit more on the pro player analysis, I got about 5 more minutes left, and then I'm going to wrap this up and send you all on your way. All right, with that being said, let's jump into the next part here. So, pro player analysis. I'm going to use Axie Zone, and I'm actually going to go to the leaderboard here, and I'm going to go through some of the top players. I'm just going to make it quick, but I want to show you some of the comps that they're playing so it can kind of speak to the meta a little bit. And some of them are playing comps that you'd even see lower down in the elo, but they just play it really well. So first one we have here, we've got Azarian. Azarian's really well known. I'm pretty sure that Azarian actually streams, hence the twitch.azarian. Really good player, see him all the time in the Discord, so hope things are going well for you, my man. You play a really good comp here. I know your most recent comp was a Terminator rep, which you guys can see. It's the exact same one I had, really strong. But he plays one of the comps I was just telling you about, and that was the plant, the beast, and the bird. Now he has a bird with all-out shot, but other than that, regardless of the fact, birds are pretty strong. You can go into the birds and you can play them a little bit more. I'm just going to bring this up so I can touch on this really quick because I know I didn't go deep into birds. The reason being is because there really is only 1 or 2 bird builds. Going with the owl here and then filling out the other parts with damage. That's kind of how a bird goes. You can get a little tricky like Azarian here, and you can go for an egg bomb and a blackmail. What that does is egg bomb is essentially aggro. It procs aroma, so that will make that every Axie on the enemy team will target the Axie on the opposing team that has aroma. So you can use this and then use blackmail, which transfers all debuffs to the Axie it's attacking, and you can do these tricky little snipes where maybe the bird doesn't do damage, but a beast does. So he can go in, throw this on a reptile, have the beast come in and clear him out real nice and easy. So this is a really good bird. Just wanted to bring this one up here. And the funny thing is, you know, this is no different than a comp you would see down at like maybe 5,000, 6,000. I'm sure some of you guys have faced almost this exact same comp. And it just goes to show you can make it to number 2 playing these comps if you know how to play them well. So next one we're going to jump into. This one, of course, most people probably know because it's just the fruit here. The fruit emojis. Really, really good double aqua build here. A little untraditional using this middle aqua. And then, of course, you've got all the different like mix and match build of Axies in here. But ultimately what's going on is this is a double aqua with a Dusk as the frontliner. Now, Dusk is really cool. It is a slightly faster version of a tank, which would normally have about 31 speed. Most Dusks have maybe anywhere from like 42 to 46 or 47 speed. They're really good, so you could play this double aqua comp, and look at it. It's very similar to the double aqua I showed you. It's got the goldfish here. Now, he does have the Bidens on the back, and that's because it's a 0 cost, so if you were playing a similar comp to this, that's why it's nice to have that 0 cost on the back. But this is a very strong team comp that you could look at as well. Probably a little more expensive with Dusk, so I wouldn't recommend going right into this one. Just to show you, double aquas are alive and strong up in the top of the leaderboard. Now, of course, we've got Elijah. Elijah's a really good guy. He was one of the first content creators that got me interested in Axie. So, I mean, if you guys haven't checked him out, go check out his channel. It's Axie on the Moon. I do actually think that this aqua right here, I remember he was buying some really cheap Axies back in the day, and I think this was one of them he bought. Really good Axie, though. Actually, it really is. It's got some unique parts to it, and it does well. Check this out here. Oh my goodness. He's pretty much got a Nemo. Elijah, you're rocking the Nemo. You've just got the Shoal Star. You got to swap that up with a random, my man. I will sell you one of those once I get them bred. You've got to try them out. They're way better with the Hero's Bane. And then he's got the full damage here. So the full damage here works good because he has the Nemo, which gives him a little bit of energy here. It does work good too because he's a double aqua, which means he's not going to do a lot of damage to reptiles and plants. But a plant will do a lot of damage to reptiles and plants, so it's good to have that balanced out with the extra damage. Now, this is what Elijah is famous for. He is kind of a reptile master. He's got these really good reptiles here. Both of them have tri-spikes. That was that combo I told you about that skips to the lowest shield enemy. And he's got the little thorny caterpillar too. So this is that exact Axie I was telling you about with the disarm, the tri-spikes, the caterpillar. Really, really good Axie. Pretty expensive, though, if you want to pick one up. You're probably going to have to pay a lot, especially if it has, a different part on it that gives it more speed or more health, whatever it might be. So let's jump to the next one here. Okay, I'm pretty sure that this one is no, this is AK. AK, I always see you playing double aquas, but I guess now we're swapping it up. So he's playing this really, really goofy bird, but I love it. He's got what's called double talk on the beak, which just got buffed recently. It does a lot of damage. It went from 50 damage to 80, and it puts your enemy to sleep. So when you're put to sleep, damage becomes true damage. It goes right through your shield. So it can be a super sneaky play to try and get a last ditch hit on somebody who can shield up a lot. But after you sleep them, the shield doesn't matter. So this is really good. I think it's funny that you call it hide too. We got to get a Jekyll in there. You got Filet-O-Fish. Oh man. You know what, AK? You and I got the same outlook on names here. I got some goofy names as well. If you ever go into my names, you're going to see I've got some pretty goofy names. But okay. Let's jump back here. Let's keep going. Next one, I believe, is Indez now. Yeah, this is Indez. So Indez can play pretty much anything. He's been playing this game for so long. He does have the triple antenna comp here. He's even got an Aqua with the tri-spikes. You can see that Reptile card I told you about. This is pretty dangerous. Tri-spikes with a 0 cost, and he has a bug antenna with the Crimson. This is, wow, this is a scary Axie. I would not want to fight this. It's actually got me thinking, I'm trying to build a beast kind of like this, but we'll see if I can make that happen. He's also got, even his tank has antenna. Normally when you go with the antenna build, I'll bring it up here so that you can see the card. It's called Bug Signal. It's a really, really good card because it, first off, does 80 damage and 60 shield, but it actually steals energy if you pair it with another Bug Signal card. Now, the unique part about this is you don't have to pair it with another Bug Signal card in the same Axie combo. You can pair it with a Bug Signal card across the entire team so long as it's the same round. So that's why you see things like Axies that have multiple bug signals throughout the whole team, is because you can pair it no matter who is alive and no matter who is attacking. So this is a really strong comp. I wouldn't highly recommend doing something like this yourself because it takes quite a bit of finesse to understand how to play this kind of comp. Rescue Puppy. I don't like this name. Jeez, Indez AK, you guys got the naming Grammy today. And then finally, let's jump into Bromp. Bromp is sitting at number 1 right now. If you guys saw my Zeroed Hero, I actually faced him using a comp similar to Indez here with the Bug Signal, and I ended up beating him. It was hard though. Bromp is a fantastic player. He is playing a pretty strong team comp here. One of the things I didn't mention in the plants, and I think it's really good that I mention it now for anybody who's still around, is the Yam. Yam is a great card. I do think that as far as Yam goes, I like it. Like, I do still like Carrot because of the energy, but I really like Yam because anytime you get attacked or you attack, it puts poison procs onto an Axie, and every single time anything is done, whether it be a 0 cost card, a damage card, whatever it might be, anytime something is done, it ticks damage depending on how many procs you have it, like how many stacks of poison, and it's 2 damage for each stack. So just imagine you put like 3 or 4 stacks of poison onto something early, and that adds up to a lot of damage. It also doesn't get affected by shield. It is true damage going right through the shield. So Yam is a really good pick here. He also has this is a really strong Axie. So this is an Aqua that has a mobility card that'll attack the backliner, and then just a bunch of damage all around. So this can assassinate backliners really easy. And then he's got the Terminator rep here, which I've already gone over it. You guys know this one. If you're seeing all these big top tier players playing with this specific Axie, you know it's probably because it's quite good. So there we go. Just went over a few of these. One thing to mention here is a lot of these are known as inferior based off of Axie Zone's rating. I wouldn't really look at the meta score. Axie Zone's not always on point with the meta score because sometimes the meta isn't just, it isn't just 1s and 0s. It's a little bit more than that. So these are the pro players I wanted to go through. These are some of the big names, some of the top players. These are the comps that they're playing, and I hope that it helps you understand kind of where the meta lies. So just to summarize it, plants in the front, unless you got the money to afford a Dusk and you want to put it into your team. You've got a variance of Aquas in the back for damage and utility. You've got Beasts for damage and utility, and you've got Birds for pure damage. You can kind of mix it up with the Reptiles, or if you want, this exact build here, you could do as a bug if you wanted, and you could just make it equally as strong, but it does a little extra damage too, or takes a little less damage from Reptiles. Whatever you wanted to do, but that is where the meta sits at the moment. It sits between damage, utility, and then these backliners who are just absolute monsters when it comes to 1v1 because of the way that their cards all combo and synchronize together. So, With that being said, I think that we have touched most of what I want to touch on with this beginner's guide part 2. I hope that you guys found it informative, having me go through all these different builds. I know I didn't touch too much on birds, but again, it's because the bird build is pretty much straightforward. You put an owl mouth on with any damage cards and you're good to go with a bird. So don't stress the bird too much. If you want to do a bird build and you're curious about it, throw a comment down below and I'll tell you what I think of the bird that you're eyeing up. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up with that, guys. Once again, really appreciate you sticking around, appreciate the support. If you did like the video, please give us a like. It helps us, helps the algorithm, and helps get Axie moving forward. We want to make sure that these new players are seeing these beginner guide videos so that they can get the best and smoothest intro into the game without making too many mistakes and knowing how to play it. Now, of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe. I put tons of content out all the time that's going to help you become one of them top tier players and rake in the big money and get those good juicy rewards, as well as, make an impact in the world. If you end up making it really big in this game and you can get a full business structure built around this game, then you're able to actually make impact in other people's lives around the world. So stick around. That's what I'm all about. We're going to be doing that. We got lots of events, giveaways, and different kinds of impactful things planned for the future. So subscribe, turn on notifications, make sure that you like the video, and if you have any questions or have any comments, throw them down below. That being said, guys, thanks again for sticking around. Until next time.